Hi, and welcome to English-Fabule. Are you learning English? Great. Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started.
China's economy is showing many warning signs right now. Many important economic numbers are going down. For example, the country's economic growth is slower than before. Foreign companies are investing less money in China. People's trust in the economy, their shopping, and even the number of new babies are all decreasing. These are serious problems for China's leaders, like flashing red lights. But the biggest worry for leaders is youth unemployment. This means a high number of young people from 16 to 24 years old cannot find jobs. The government used to say that about 21% of these young people were unemployed. However, this number only included those who were actively looking for work. If we also count young people who have stopped trying to find a job, the real number could be much higher, possibly as much as 46%. This high number means around 31 million young men and women are unhappy and have no work. Historically, such a large group of unhappy young people has been the biggest danger for China's leaders. This situation reminds leaders of a past event. The last time there were so many restless students in China was in the year 1989. During that year, many students gathered and protested in Tiananmen Square. China's leaders do not want to see such protests happen again. The events of 1989 taught the ruling party a clear lesson. The greatest dangers to its power come from problems within the country, from its own people. This lesson has shaped how China's leaders think about security even today. 2. A lesson from the past. The Tiananmen Square protests of 1989 taught China's leaders a very important lesson. They realized that the biggest dangers to their government often come from inside the country, not from outside. This is why Beijing now spends a great deal more money on keeping internal security strong. Its budget for national defense, for example, is huge, about $180 billion. But the government spends even more on making sure people inside China do not cause trouble. This heavy spending shows how much the party learned from the past about controlling unrest within its own borders. For many years, people have often thought the Tiananmen protests were only about demanding democracy. It is true that some symbols and calls from that time asked for political change. However, the full reasons for the protests were more complex. These large-scale movements did not begin just because people wanted democracy. They were also fueled by everyday economic problems that affected many lives. People were deeply unhappy about several things. Prices for basic goods, known as inflation, were rising quickly, making life harder. There was also a lot of corruption, where government officials used their power unfairly for personal gain. This made many citizens feel angry and cheated. Most importantly, a lack of jobs was a big problem, especially for young people. These everyday economic issues were like small sparks. They grew into larger frustrations and led many people to join the protests. The government learned that economic unhappiness could quickly lead to big political problems and social unrest. This lesson from the past helped shape how the party acts even today when facing new challenges. It showed them that addressing economic issues is key to maintaining control and peace within the nation. The memory of these past events remains strong for China's leaders. They understand that a stable economy and careful internal security can prevent widespread frustration and keep the country calm. 3. A new idea. The year 1997 brought new challenges. China faced the Asian financial crisis. This time, there was another big problem. Many people lost their jobs. State-owned companies laid off millions of workers. In 1997, 6 million people lost their jobs. The next year, 7 million more lost theirs, and then 8 million after that. This was a very large number of unemployed people in a short time. The government felt very worried. They remembered the Tiananmen protests from 1989, which started because of economic problems and a lack of jobs. They also saw what happened in other countries, like Indonesia, where people protested and their leader was removed. The fall of the Soviet Union was also fresh in their minds. Leaders in Beijing worried that many young people, around 16 to 18 years old, would soon finish school. They would enter a job market that had no work for them. These young people might become angry and start to protest, just like before. To stop this from happening, the party came up with a new and clever idea. They decided to massively increase the number of students going to university. This was almost like a bribe. In China, getting into a good university was a great honor. Before 1998, very few people went to college, maybe just 1 out of every 12 kids. The economy was not big enough to need many university graduates. But the government changed its mind. Beijing quickly told all schools to accept as many students as possible. This was an emergency order. New university enrollment grew by almost 60% in just 1 year, even though schools were not ready. Teachers worked extra hours, and classrooms became very full. By the year 2013, the total number of university students had grown from a few million to 35 million. This was a huge and fast change. This plan worked in a simple way. It took millions of young people out of the job market. Instead of looking for jobs and maybe causing trouble, they were in classrooms, under the government's eye. This reduced the number of unemployed youth. It also gave many middle-class families hope. Their children now had a chance to go to university. The party hoped that these young people, who were given an opportunity, would support the system instead of fighting against it. This new idea was a way to manage a big social and economic problem and keep the country stable. 4. A hard race. The government's new plan to increase university enrollment had a clever goal. It wanted to stop young people from gathering and protesting, as they had in the past. But simply putting more students in classrooms was not enough. The party made sure that education became a very hard race, so students would be too busy to think about activism. After 1998, two big changes happened. First, universities started charging tuition fees. This was a new thing. Before, education was mostly free. Now, students and their families had to pay money to attend college. This added a lot of pressure. Families had to work hard to afford these fees. Getting a degree became a costly goal. Second, the government stopped guaranteeing jobs for graduates. In the past, when you finished university, the government would often help you find a job. But this system ended. From then on, finding work was each student's own responsibility. This meant students had to compete fiercely in the job market after graduation. Success was no longer promised, it had to be earned individually. These changes created intense competition among students. Millions of young people were now in universities, all striving for good grades and future jobs. The pressure to succeed was immense. Students spent most of their time studying. They had many exams, long hours of homework, and often attended extra tutoring sessions. They had little free time. This busy schedule left them with no energy or time to think about political issues or joining protests. The feeling of being in a constant race made students anxious. Everyone was trying to get ahead, and this made it difficult for them to build strong bonds or a sense of shared community. Instead of feeling like they were part of a group with common problems, students felt like they were on their own. This low-trust culture prevented any true feeling of solidarity, which could lead to large protests. This system used scarcity as a key tool. The government offered enough chances for many to get into university. This fueled the desire to compete. But there were never enough good jobs or comfortable positions for everyone. This meant that students always had to fight hard for their place. This kept them focused on their personal struggle for success rather than looking at bigger issues. This way, the party kept young people busy and away from the streets, preventing any chance of widespread discontent turning into political action. 5. The good times. For many years, the government's big plan worked very well. This system had led to a huge increase in the number of students attending universities. Many people might have worried that after these students finished their studies, there would not be enough jobs for everyone. However, for a significant period, this worry did not become a real problem. The key reason for this success was China's incredibly fast economic growth. The country's economy was expanding at an astonishing and constant rate, unlike almost anywhere else in the world. New industries were forming rapidly, and existing businesses were growing bigger and more powerful. This strong economic boom meant that the economy needed many more workers than ever before. By the time the larger groups of students finished their university degrees, the job market was perfectly ready for them. For example, between the late 1990s and the early 2000s, China's economy grew enormously. By the year 2002, the economy was a remarkable 42% larger than it had been just a few years earlier. This fast and steady growth created a vast number of new jobs, especially in sectors that required educated and skilled individuals. Many of these were desirable white-collar jobs in offices, technology companies, and other new businesses. So, the millions of new graduates found places easily in the booming economy. There were enough jobs to absorb all of them. The party's strategy, which used education to manage the growing youth population, was clearly a success during these years. It provided young people with a clear and hopeful path from university straight to a good and stable job. This made countless families feel secure and optimistic about their children's future. People across the nation could clearly see a direct link between getting a good education and securing a good job. This helped to create a powerful feeling of stability and national progress. The good times for the economy truly meant good times for many young graduates, too. They could look forward to successful careers, rising incomes, and a comfortable life, often better than their parents' generation. This period strongly confirmed that the government's ideas had worked perfectly to keep society calm, productive, and moving forward. 6. The problem starts. After the mid-2010s, things started to change in China. For many years, the economy grew very fast. There were enough jobs for new university graduates. This made many families happy. But then, the country's economic growth began to slow down. This was a big challenge. Even with slower economic growth, China's universities continued to accept more students. The government did this for political reasons. It helped to keep young people busy and hopeful. But this created a big problem. There were many university graduates, but not enough good white-collar jobs for all of them. The job market became very difficult for young people. There were too many people for too few positions. The competition for these good jobs became very fierce. Students had to work incredibly hard and study long hours just to have a small chance at success. This brought a lot of pressure. This intense competition also led to new and demanding work rules in companies. Many businesses began to ask workers to follow very strict and long schedules. A well-known example was the 996 work culture. This meant working from 9 in the morning until 9 at night 6 days a week. It was a very tiring way to work. Workers in China were often working much longer hours than people in many other countries. They often worked more than 2,000 hours each year. This was because companies wanted to get as much work as possible from their employees. With many people looking for jobs, companies had more power to ask for more. The situation felt like stretching a rubber band. You can stretch it a lot, but if you stretch it too much, it will snap. People could work harder for a while. However, this extreme pressure could not last forever without causing big problems. When getting ahead started to feel almost impossible, young people began to feel very unhappy and without much hope. 7. Young people are not happy. The hard competition in China now feels too difficult, and many young people are becoming hopeless about their future. They are not finding it easy to get ahead. There are several clear signs of this widespread unhappiness and disillusionment. One sign is that more people are buying lottery tickets. For some, buying a ticket offers a cheap source of hope when they cannot find it anywhere else. Another sign is the rise of what some call professional children. These are adults, sometimes as many as 16 million of them, who have simply given up on finding a job. They often live at home, feeling separated from the working world. People are also creating many new Chinese words to express their deep feelings of frustration, alienation, and having no hope. These terms show how common these feelings are. Additionally, some young people are turning to alternative lifestyles, such as dressing like goths or punks, or adopting new ways of thinking. These choices show they are unhappy with the traditional path set for them. In the past, people often thought that if someone was poor or did not succeed, it was their own fault. They believed it was due to a lack of ability, not working hard enough, or having low education. This view was common between 2004 and 2014. But this thinking has changed a lot. Now, young people largely believe that the economic system itself is unfair. Studies in 2023 showed that 2 of the top 3 reasons people gave for poverty were unequal opportunity and an unfair economic system. They also believe that the main reason people are rich is often due to connections, not just talent. This new way of thinking means young people no longer blame themselves for their failures. Instead, they believe the system is broken and does not offer fair chances. They feel that their generation has missed out on the opportunities their parents had. For example, many of today's 21-year-old graduates struggle greatly to find good work. But their parents, who were likely born in the middle of the 1970s, grew up during a time of China's fastest ever economic development. These parents graduated in the late 1990s, right at the peak of the good economic years, when the economy was growing almost twice as fast. This stark contrast between generations creates a powerful feeling. Young people often ask themselves, "Am I better off than my parents?" For many, the answer is no. They feel like the train has left the station and they have simply missed it. Even those who go to college, who are already among the luckiest in China, feel this way. This combination of having some privilege but also facing many difficulties makes the educated middle class in cities feel especially frustrated. 8. The real danger. The difference between the lives of parents and their children in China is very clear. Parents often grew up when China's economy was booming. They saw fast development and easily found good jobs, building comfortable lives. Today's young people, even after university, find it much harder to get good work. Many feel they have missed the train of good opportunities that their parents had. This big difference creates a serious problem for the country's leaders. Young, educated people in cities compare their current struggles to their parents' successes. They feel they are not doing as well, even if the country is richer overall. This feeling is called relative deprivation. It means people feel unlucky or left behind when they compare their own lives to those of others, especially family members who had an easier path. This situation is very risky for the ruling party. The real danger is not that people will suddenly ask for a new type of government. History shows that big problems in China often begin with simpler economic worries. For example, the protests in Tiananmen Square in 1989 were not just about political freedom. They started because of common complaints like rising prices, unfairness, and a lack of jobs. These economic issues caused deep frustration. Many people outside China still think those protests were only about democracy. But experts say something different. While a few activists wanted clear political change, most people took part because they were upset about problems caused by the changing economy. These middle-class concerns about daily life and jobs created a lot of anger. A few clever individuals then used that anger to push for bigger changes. Today, the party worries about similar widespread frustration. For a long time, the government offered a clear promise. If you work hard and get a good education, you will find a good job and have a successful life. But for many young people today, this important promise seems broken. This feeling of a broken economic promise, not a sudden demand for new political ideas, is the true threat to stability. If China ever sees another big social movement, it will likely follow this same pattern, starting with anger about economic future and perceived unfairness. What do you think is the biggest challenge for China's young people today?
Hey there! Just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really, really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.